What if everything we thought we knew about ancient history was wrong? Picture a stormy day in 1901. A group of divers off the coast of a tiny Greek island stumble upon a shipwreck buried beneath the waves. Among the broken pottery and corroded statues, they pull up something that shouldn't exist: a lump of bronze, caked in centuries of rust. But when archaeologists clean it, they find gears, tiny, intricate gears, arranged in a way that wouldn't be seen again for over 1,000 years. This is the Antikythera Mechanism, a device so advanced it rewrote the timeline of human ingenuity. And it's just one of countless artifacts that defy logic, artifacts that whisper secrets of civilizations far more capable than we ever imagined. These aren't just curiosities gathering dust in museum basements. They're fingerprints left behind by minds that somehow leaped ahead of their time, objects that challenge our textbooks, our assumptions, even our pride in modern innovation. From ancient batteries to maps that show lands undiscovered for millennia, these artifacts force us to ask how, why, and perhaps most unsettling of all, what else is still out there waiting to be found. Today, we're diving into 25 of the most baffling relics ever uncovered. Some are famous, like the Antikythera Mechanism, while others are lesser known but no less astonishing. Each one is a puzzle with missing pieces, a riddle scribbled in stone or metal by hands we'll never meet. But here's the thing: when you piece their stories together, a pattern starts to emerge. A hint that history, as we've written it, might be missing entire chapters. So buckle up, because by the end of this journey, you won't just see these artifacts as oddities. You'll see them as clues that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about who we are and where we come from. The storm that churned the waters off Antikythera in 1901 didn't just reveal a shipwreck, it exposed a time capsule of human genius. When that corroded bronze lump was first hauled onto the deck, no one could have guessed it held the shattered remains of the world's oldest known computer. Dating back to around 100 BCE, the Antikythera Mechanism wasn't just ahead of its time, it was centuries, maybe even millennia ahead. Inside its fragmented casing, researchers found a labyrinth of interlocking gears, some thinner than a fingernail, arranged with precision that wouldn't be matched until the mechanical clocks of the Renaissance. But this wasn't just a timekeeper, it was a celestial calculator capable of predicting solar eclipses, tracking the movements of planets, and even accounting for the irregular orbit of the moon, a feat requiring knowledge of gravitational theory that wouldn't exist for another 1,800 years. So how did ancient Greeks engineer something so sophisticated? Some argue it was the work of Archimedes himself, whose lost manuscripts hinted at mechanical wonders. Others whisper of Atlantis, or even more outlandish theories, visitors from the stars, perhaps, or a forgotten civilization that mastered secrets we've yet to rediscover. But the most unsettling possibility, that this device wasn't unique. Fragments of similar mechanisms may have been dismissed over the centuries as mere curiosities, their purpose misunderstood. The Antikythera Mechanism survived purely by chance, buried in the silence of the sea. It forces us to wonder how many other leaps of genius have been lost to time. And what does that say about the true pace of human innovation? This wasn't just a machine. It was a message carved in bronze, reminding us that history is full of surprises and that our ancestors were far more extraordinary than we ever gave them credit for. Buried in the dusty archives of the National Museum of Iraq sits an unassuming clay jar, roughly the size of a fist. At first glance, it looks like any other ancient pottery fragment until you notice the copper cylinder inside, wrapped around an iron rod. When German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig unearthed this oddity in 1938 near Baghdad, he made a claim that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. This 2,000-year-old artifact dating back to the Parthian Empire wasn't just a container. It was a battery. Experiments with replicas have shown that when filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or citrus juice, The jar generates a small but measurable electric current up to 2 volts. That's enough to power a simple light bulb or, as some theorists suggest, electroplate gold onto silver objects, and that's where the mystery deepens. Electroplating wouldn't be discovered until the 19th century, so why would a civilization from 200 BCE need such technology? Skeptics argue the jar was merely a sacred vessel for storing scrolls, its metal components purely decorative. But then why the deliberate design to conduct electricity? Ancient texts from the region mention rituals involving magical, tingling sensations, leading others to propose these batteries were used in religious ceremonies, perhaps to give worshippers a literal shock during temple rites. The implications are staggering. If these jars were indeed primitive batteries, they suggest a fleeting grasp of electrical principles lost for centuries. Even more unsettling, dozens of similar jars have been found across the region, hinting this wasn't a one-off experiment but a widespread, if forgotten, practice. Yet nowhere in Parthian records is there any mention of harnessing power, no diagrams or instructions. It's as if the knowledge appeared and then vanished without a trace. What makes the Baghdad Battery so haunting isn't just its existence. It's the eerie silence surrounding it. No context, no purpose, no legacy. Just a clay jar with a secret, waiting 2 millennia for someone to ask the right questions. And if we misjudge this relic, what else have we overlooked? In a quiet corner of Yale University's Voynich Library lies a book that has defied understanding for over 6 centuries. Bound in faded vellum, its pages are filled with looping, alien script, a language unlike anything ever seen before. Alongside the text are strange illustrations, plants that don't exist, celestial maps of unknown constellations, and nude women bathing in what appears to be green liquid. This is the Voynich Manuscript, and it's one of history's most stubborn enigmas. Carbon dated to the early 15th century, the manuscript's origins are as murky as its contents. Some believe it was the work of medieval alchemists, their secret knowledge encoded to avoid persecution. Others argue it's an elaborate Renaissance hoax crafted to fool wealthy collectors. But here's what makes it truly baffling. Not a single word of its text has ever been convincingly translated. The world's top cryptographers, including codebreakers who cracked Nazi ciphers during World War II, have thrown themselves at its pages only to walk away empty-handed. Even modern artificial intelligence, trained on thousands of languages, has failed to find a pattern. The letters flow like a real script with grammatical structure and repetition, yet they refuse to yield meaning. Then there are the illustrations. Botanists have scoured the pages, but the plants depicted don't match any known species. Some resemble hybrids of real flora, while others seem plucked from pure imagination. The astronomical diagrams show celestial configurations that don't align with any recorded events, leaving astronomers scratching their heads, and those eerie bathing women. Theories range from depictions of a lost fertility ritual to allegorical representations of alchemical processes. The wildest theories suggest the manuscript is a message from another world, either an extraterrestrial communication or a glimpse into a parallel reality. More grounded scholars propose it's written in a constructed language, or perhaps an extinct tongue with no surviving relatives. But without a Rosetta Stone to unlock its secrets, the Voynich Manuscript remains a locked door in the house of history. What's most haunting isn't just that we can't read it, it's that someone, somewhere, 600 years ago clearly could. This wasn't random scribbling. The care in its creation, the precision of its illustrations, the fluidity of its script all point to intentional, sophisticated work. So who was it meant for? And why did the knowledge it carries vanish so completely? Every failed attempt to decipher it isn't just a setback. It's a reminder that the past still holds mysteries we may never solve. Buried in the sands of an Egyptian tomb near Saqqara, a small wooden artifact lay forgotten for over 2,000 years, until someone noticed its uncanny resemblance to a modern airplane. Known as the Saqqara Bird, this delicate carving dates back to around 200 BCE and measures just under 6 inches from wingtip to tail. At first glance, it looks like a stylized bird typical of ancient Egyptian art. But take a closer look. Its wings aren't rounded like a bird's. They're straight, angled, and perfectly symmetrical, with a distinct downward curve at the tips. And that's not all. The tail isn't horizontal like a bird's tail feathers. It's vertical, exactly like the rudder of an aircraft. When engineers and aerodynamics experts examined the Saqqara Bird, some made a startling claim. This wasn't just a child's toy or a ritual object. It was a scale model of a working glider. Wind tunnel tests showed that with minor adjustments to its wing shape, the artifact could generate enough lift to stay airborne. In fact, a full-scale replica built in the 1990s not only flew but demonstrated remarkable stability in flight. So does this mean the ancient Egyptians understood the principles of aviation centuries before the Wright brothers? Mainstream Egyptologists remain skeptical, arguing that the vertical tail fin could represent a bird's folded legs or a stylistic flourish. After all, no other evidence of ancient flight technology has ever been found in Egypt. But proponents of the glider theory point to hieroglyphs that some interpret as depictions of flying machines, vague but intriguing. Others suggest the Saqqara Bird might have been a ceremonial throwback to even older knowledge, a relic of a forgotten understanding passed down through generations. The mystery only deepens when you consider how perfectly the design mirrors modern aerodynamics. Coincidence, or did someone in ancient Egypt stumble upon a principle that wouldn't be discovered for another 2 millennia? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, not proof of an ancient air force, but a glimpse of experimentation, of minds playing with ideas far ahead of their time. The Saqqara Bird doesn't just challenge our timeline of aviation. It challenges us to reconsider what ancient civilizations might have imagined, even if they never fully realized those dreams. And that's what makes it so fascinating, not as a definitive answer, but as a question carved in wood waiting for us to unravel. High in the remote mountains of China's Bayan Karaula region, a discovery in 1938 would ignite debates that still rage today. A team of archaeologists led by Dr. Kai Pu-Te stumbled upon a series of caves, but these weren't just any caves. Inside, nestled among ancient skeletons with unusually large skulls and slender frames, lay hundreds of stone discs, each roughly a foot in diameter and marked with a spiral groove that radiated from a central hole. At first glance, they seemed like ordinary burial artifacts until someone noticed the tiny hieroglyphs etched along those grooves. When translated allegedly by a linguist named Tsum Nui in the 1960s, the inscriptions told a story so extraordinary it defied belief. The text described a spacecraft crashing into the mountains 12,000 years ago, its occupants, the Dropa, stranded on Earth. Unable to repair their vessel, they allegedly mingled with local tribes, their descendants becoming the unusual skeletons found in the caves. If true, these stones would be the first physical evidence of extraterrestrial contact in human history. But here's where the controversy takes flight. No reputable scholar outside a handful of fringe researchers has ever examined the original discs. The Chinese government has repeatedly denied their existence, dismissing them as a hoax. Skeptics argue the entire story was fabricated, pointing to inconsistencies in the timeline and the lack of verifiable documentation. Even the name Tsum Nui raises eyebrows. It's not a recognized Chinese name, and some suspect it was invented to lend credibility to the tale. Yet the Dropa stones persist in popular culture, often cited in ancient astronaut theories. Why? Because they tap into a deeper question. If even one of these artifacts is genuine, what does that mean for our understanding of history? The discs, whether real or not, challenge us to confront how easily the line between myth and evidence can blur. And that's the real power of the Dropa stones, not as proof of aliens, but as a mirror reflecting our endless fascination with the unknown. Whether hoax or history, they remind us that some mysteries refuse to be buried, no matter how deeply they're hidden in the mountains of time. In 1936, a couple hiking along the banks of Texas's Red Creek made a discovery that would ignite debates for decades to come. As they explored a rocky outcrop, they spotted a curiously shaped stone, only to realize it wasn't just a stone. Embedded within it was a hammer, its wooden handle partially fossilized, its iron head fused seamlessly into 400-million-year-old rock. This is the London hammer, and it's a paradox wrapped in geology. On one side, mainstream science argues the hammer isn't nearly as ancient as the rock surrounding it. Geologists point to a process called concretion, where minerals can rapidly encase objects in a matter of centuries, creating the illusion of extreme age. The hammer's design, an unmistakably 19th century tool, supports this view, but here's where things get thorny. Independent tests in the 1980s allegedly showed the hammer's metallurgy was unusual, with impurities and forging techniques not typical of modern industry. Could it have been dropped by a time traveler, as some fringe theorists suggest, or is it evidence of a forgotten industrial society predating known history? Creationists seized on the artifact as proof that Earth's geological timeline is flawed, arguing the hammer's encasement challenges mainstream dating methods. Meanwhile, archaeologists counter that without proper documentation of its original discovery context, the hammer was removed from its site before thorough study. It's impossible to draw definitive conclusions. The rock's age might be a red herring, a trick of mineral deposition rather than a chronological clue. What makes the London hammer so compelling isn't just its mysterious embedding. It's the way it exposes how quickly assumptions can fracture under scrutiny. If the hammer is a Victorian-era tool swallowed by time, why does its metal composition raise eyebrows? If it's genuinely ancient, how did its creators possess such precise metallurgical knowledge? The debate rages because the artifact sits at the crossroads of two equally unsettling possibilities. Either we've misunderstood geological processes, or we've overlooked an entire chapter of human innovation. Perhaps the hammer's greatest lesson is humility. It reminds us that history isn't a tidy timeline, but a tangled web of anomalies waiting to append what we think we know. Whether a quirk of nature or a relic of the impossible, the London hammer doesn't just challenge science, it dares us to keep questioning. In the dusty archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a map was discovered in 1929 that would send shockwaves through the world of cartography. Drawn on gazelle skin in 1513 by the Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis, this fragmentary chart depicts coastlines with eerie precision, coastlines no European explorer could have known at the time. But the real bombshell, Antarctica, appears on the map, not as the ice-bound wasteland we know today, but as a landmass free of glaciers, with detailed rivers and mountain ranges matching modern seismic surveys of the continent beneath its frozen shell. How could a 16th-century navigator map a continent that wouldn't be officially discovered for another 300 years, and show it as it looked 6,000 years before that, when it was last ice-free? Piri Reis himself wrote that he compiled the map from 20 older sources, including charts dating back to Alexander the Great's time. This has led some researchers to propose the existence of a lost ancient seafaring civilization with advanced cartographic knowledge, perhaps even the legendary Atlantis. Others point to the map's startling alignment with modern sonar, mappings of subglacial topography, details invisible to the naked eye until the 20th century. Skeptics offer alternative explanations. Could the landmass labeled as Antarctica actually be South America, distorted by the mapmaker's limited knowledge? While some coastal shapes bear resemblance, the map accurately places the Amazon and Andes regions Europeans were already familiar with by 1513. Another theory suggests Piri Reis might have incorporated speculative geography from medieval Arab traders, blending fact and folklore. Yet even this doesn't fully account for the uncanny accuracy of latitudes or the inclusion of the Palmer Peninsula, a feature buried under miles of ice for millennia. What makes the Piri Reis Map so unsettling isn't just its anomalies, it's the implications. If ancient civilizations truly mapped Antarctica before the ice caps formed, what other knowledge might they have possessed, and why did that wisdom vanish, leaving only fragments in the hands of later scholars like Piri Reis? The map dangles a tantalizing possibility that history's dark ages might have been far brighter than we imagine, their light snuffed out by time's relentless tide. Whether a masterpiece of deduction or a relic of forgotten science, this stained piece of parchment refuses to let us dismiss the past as primitive. It whispers that our ancestors might have seen farther than we ever suspected, and challenges us to wonder what else our modern arrogance has overlooked. Stretching across nearly 200 square miles of Peru's arid Nazca Desert, a series of colossal figures carved into the earth have baffled researchers since their rediscovery in the early 20th century. From towering spiders and hummingbirds with wingspans rivaling football fields to perfect geometric shapes spanning miles with mathematical precision, the Nazca lines are an encyclopedia of giant artwork invisible from the ground. To truly see them, you'd need to do something no human could until the invention of flight soar hundreds of feet above the desert. Theories about their purpose read like a catalogue of human curiosity. Some archaeologists propose they were sacred pathways for ritual processions, walked by priests under the blistering sun. Others argue they align with celestial events, mapping solstices or constellations to track time for agriculture. Then there's the more provocative idea: could these have been signals or even landing guides for beings not of this world? The line's sheer scale and invisibility from the ground lend an eerie credence to this notion. How could a culture without aerial technology create designs only fully appreciable from the sky? The engineering behind the lines only deepens the mystery. The Nazca people, flourishing between 200 BCE and 600 CE, lacked modern surveying tools, yet their geoglyphs maintain razor-straight edges across miles, curves with flawless symmetry, and proportions that stay accurate despite the uneven desert terrain. Researchers experimenting with ancient techniques have shown it's possible to replicate small sections using simple stakes and ropes, but scaling this up to the Nazca's level would require an almost supernatural mastery of perspective and coordination. Perhaps most intriguing is what the lines suggest about the Nazca's worldview. Unlike monuments meant to impress or intimidate, these creations were effectively invisible to their makers. This implies a purpose beyond human vanity, a message intended for the gods, the cosmos, or something beyond our current understanding. The desert's stable climate has preserved the lines for millennia, but the knowledge behind their creation has eroded, leaving us with a canvas of questions. Were they a prayer etched into the earth, a cosmic clock, or something even our modern imagination hasn't yet grasped? The Nazca lines defy simple explanation because they weren't meant for us. They're a testament to how ancient cultures perceived their place in the universe, not as passive observers, but as participants in a dialogue with forces far greater than themselves. And that's what makes them timeless. They challenge us to look beyond practicality, to consider that the past's greatest achievements might not have been built for mortal eyes at all. It was a routine day for rockhounds in the hills near Olancha, California, in 1961, until they cracked open what appeared to be an ordinary geode and found the impossible inside. Nestled within the ancient stone was an object resembling a 20th century spark plug, its metallic core encased in hardened clay and a shell of mineral deposits. This was the Koso artifact, and its very existence seemed to defy the laws of geology. Tests initially suggested the geode was 500,000 years old, a date that would place this mechanical relic long before Homo sapiens walked the earth. Skeptics were quick to dismiss the find as a prank or misidentification. The spark plug's design matched early 20th century models, specifically those used in Ford automobiles from the 1920s. Could it have been dropped by a miner or prospector, then rapidly encased by mineral-rich water in a process called concretion? Geologists note that under rare conditions, objects can fossilize within decades, but the Koso artifact's dense, layered encasement seemed to suggest a much longer timeline. Independent researchers who analyzed the object reported an unexplained ceramic component surrounding the metal, unlike any known spark plug insulation from the modern era. Then, just as debates reached their peak, the artifact vanished. After changing hands among private collectors, it disappeared without a trace in the late 1960s, fueling conspiracy theories. Had someone intentionally silenced evidence of advanced ancient technology, or was its disappearance a convenient way to bury an embarrassing hoax? The truth remains as layered as the geode itself. What makes the Koso artifact so haunting isn't just the mystery of its origin, it's the nagging question of context. If it's genuinely ancient, who could have crafted it? Theories range from time travelers to lost civilizations with industrial knowledge, even extraterrestrial visitors. But the most unsettling possibility is simpler: that natural processes we don't fully understand could mimic human technology in ways we haven't yet imagined. Without the artifact itself to study, we're left with a puzzle that challenges not just our timeline of human innovation, but our confidence in distinguishing the artificial from the organic. The Koso artifact doesn't just ask us to reconsider history, it asks us to reconsider what's possible. Tucked away in the collections of the Maine State Museum is a tiny object with enormous implications. A silver coin no larger than a fingernail, stamped with the symbol of a cross and the name of an 11th century Norwegian king. Discovered in 1957 during an excavation of a Wabanaki settlement at Naskeek Point, this artifact, known as the Maine penny, shouldn't exist in North America. Minted between 1065 and 1080, it predates Columbus's voyage by over 400 years, raising a tantalizing question. Did Norse explorers travel further south than Vinland, leaving behind traces of their presence in what is now the United States? The coin's discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. At face value, it seems to support the idea of extensive pre-Columbian Norse contact, far beyond their known settlements in Newfoundland. But skeptics argue it could have arrived through later trade networks. Indigenous peoples along the eastern seaboard had vast exchange systems, and it's possible the coin traveled south over centuries, passed from hand to hand until it reached Maine. Radiocarbon dating of the site places it between 1200 and 1400, long after the Viking Age, adding fuel to this theory. Yet there's a counterpoint. No other European artifacts from that era have been found in the region, making this coin a solitary outlier. Proponents of the Norse connection point to sagas mentioning expeditions farther south, though these accounts are often ambiguous. Could the Maine penny be physical proof of those lost voyages? Or is it simply a red herring, an anomaly that tells us more about trade than exploration? The debate hinges on context. The coin was found alongside thousands of indigenous artifacts, suggesting it wasn't a solitary drop from a passing ship but part of a local collection. If it arrived through trade, why was it valued by the Wabanaki, who had no monetary economy? Some speculate it may have been kept as a ceremonial object or talisman, repurposed far from its original intent. What makes the Maine penny so compelling isn't just its origin, it's the silence surrounding it. Unlike the ruins at Elance Ox Meadows, this artifact stands alone, without the ruins of longhouses or tools to give it company. It's a whisper, not a shout, hinting at connections we can't yet prove. Whether evidence of forgotten explorers or a testament to the vast reach of indigenous trade, this unassuming coin refuses to let us simplify history. It's a reminder that the past is full of loose threads waiting for someone to pull, and that one small object can unravel the stories we thought we knew. Along the banks of the Mureș River in Romania, construction workers digging a trench in 1974 uncovered something that shouldn't have been there. A wedge-shaped metal object buried 35 feet deep, encased in a layer of sediment dating back 10,000 years. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable until lab tests revealed its composition. Aluminum coated in a thick layer of oxide. That's impossible. Aluminum doesn't occur naturally in metallic form, and humans only learned to extract it in 1825. So how did the Ayod wedge end up in Pleistocene-era strata, alongside the bones of extinct mastodons? Initial metallurgical analysis showed the wedge was made of an alloy consisting mostly of aluminum with traces of other metals, an advanced composition suggesting industrial-era manufacturing. But here's where the mystery deepens. The oxide layer covering the object was measured at over 1 millimeter thick, a buildup experts claim would require thousands of years to form under normal conditions. Skeptics argue the wedge could be a piece of heavy machinery from modern mining operations, dislodged and buried by river sediment in a freak geological event. Yet no machinery matching its shape or alloy has ever been identified in the region, and its location far from any known industrial sites makes accidental deposition unlikely. Proponents of ancient astronaut theories seized on the artifact as potential evidence of extraterrestrial technology, pointing to its aerodynamic shape as resembling a landing strut or tool from a spacecraft. But mainstream archaeologists dismiss this, suggesting it might be a fragment from a World War II aircraft, despite the lack of records detailing any crashes in the area. More puzzling still, independent researchers who examined the wedge noted its concave grooves and symmetrical design, features that seem intentionally engineered rather than the result of natural erosion or industrial wear. The most unsettling possibility, that the Ayod wedge represents a brief, brilliant flash of metallurgical knowledge lost to time. Ancient civilizations like the Romans reportedly produced small amounts of aluminum through painstaking chemical processes, though no surviving artifacts confirm this. Could an unknown culture have mastered aluminum smelting millennia before the Industrial Revolution, only for their techniques to vanish without a trace? Or does the wedge hint at something even more extraordinary? A fleeting encounter with technology far beyond any human capability of its era. What makes the Ayod wedge so compelling isn't just its paradoxical existence, but the questions it forces us to confront. Without clear provenance or comparable artifacts, it floats in a limbo between history and anomaly. It doesn't fit our timelines, our textbooks, or even our understanding of human ingenuity. And that's precisely why it lingers in the imagination, not as proof of any one theory, but as a silent challenge to all of them. Some relics whisper secrets. The Ayod wedge shouts a single, unnerving question. What else don't we know? Deep in the highlands of central Mexico, archaeologists excavating a burial site at Tlaxcala in 1933 made a discovery that didn't just surprise them, it upended conventional narratives of pre-Columbian history. Among the artifacts attributed to the indigenous Matlatzinca culture lay a small terracotta head with features unmistakably Roman, a bearded face, delicate curls, and a style of craftsmanship alien to Mesoamerica. Carbon dating placed the burial site between 900 and 1200 CE, centuries before Columbus sailed. Yet the head bore the hallmarks of 2nd or 3rd century Roman sculpture. So how did a relic of the Mediterranean Empire end up in an ancient Mexican tomb? The implications are explosive. If authentic, the Tlaxcala head suggests transatlantic contact long before recorded European exploration. Advocates point to Roman shipbuilding capabilities. Their vessels could theoretically have drifted across the Atlantic via currents, much like the Vikings' later voyages. Some even cite murky accounts from Roman historians mentioning distant lands beyond the Western Ocean, but skeptics counter with a simpler explanation: contamination. The head was uncovered during early 20th century excavations, a time when archaeological methods were less rigorous. Could it have been accidentally introduced by workers or even planted as a hoax? Scientific analysis adds fuel to the debate. X-ray fluorescence tests in 2001 revealed the terracotta's composition matches local clay, not Mediterranean materials. Proponents argue this proves it was made in Mexico, possibly by a Roman expatriate or through cultural diffusion. Opponents dismiss this, noting that similar clay exists in Europe, and without trace elements like pollen or plant residues trapped in the artifact, its origin remains inconclusive. What makes this artifact so tantalizing isn't just its existence, it's the web of possibilities it weaves. Could a lone Roman ship have strayed off course, reaching shores they'd never map? Or was this head a cherished heirloom passed through generations of trade networks spanning continents we didn't know were connected? The truth may lie somewhere between, not proof of empires meeting, but of whispers crossing oceans carried by winds and waves we're only beginning to understand. The Takaxik head doesn't rewrite history. It asks us to listen harder to the stories hiding in its terracotta curved stories we're still learning to hear. In a small private museum in Peru, a collection of stones tells a story that defies everything we know about history. The Ica stones, thousands of them, are etched with scenes that shouldn't exist: humans battling dinosaurs, performing complex medical procedures like brain surgery, even observing celestial events with telescope-like precision. According to their most famous promoter, a local physician named Dr. Javier Cabrera, these stones were discovered in a cave and date back to a prehistoric civilization wiped out by a cataclysm. But here's the problem: mainstream science insists they're modern fakes. So why do these enigmatic carvings continue to captivate believers and skeptics alike? The controversy begins with the stones themselves. Many depict dinosaurs with startling anatomical accuracy, long before modern paleontology reconstructed these creatures in detail. Others show what appear to be heart transplants, cesarean sections, and even blood transfusions. If genuine, they'd rewrite human history, suggesting an advanced culture coexisted with or predated the dinosaurs. But geological tests tell a different story. The andesite stones show fresh tool marks under magnification, and the oxide patina covering the engravings can be artificially replicated. Most damning, in the 1970s, local farmers admitted to carving similar stones for tourists, though they claimed the real ones existed separately. Yet the Ica stones refuse to fade into obscurity. Their allure lies in the questions they force us to confront. Why would a hoaxer include such specific, anachronistic details like the precise rendering of a stegosaurus's tail spikes, decades before science confirmed them? Cabrera argued that the stones were a library left by an ancient race to preserve knowledge, a theory that resonates with fans of alternative history. Others suggest the carvings might be genuine artifacts later, enhanced by locals to appeal to buyers, blurring the line between fraud and salvage. What makes these stones so enduring isn't just their imagery. It's the psychology they tap into, the hunger for evidence that humans once knew more than we do today, that history's official narrative is incomplete. Even debunked, the Ica stones serve as cultural Rorschach tests. For some, they're proof of forgotten giants. For others, cautionary tales about how easily we can be fooled by what we want to believe. Either way, they remind us that the past is never just about facts, it's about the stories we're desperate to tell ourselves. Hidden away in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, a single piece of linen has sparked more debate than perhaps any other religious artifact in history. The Shroud of Turin, a 14-foot-long cloth bearing the faint, haunting image of a crucified man, has been venerated by millions as the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ. To believers, the eerie negative imprint, visible only in 19th-century photographs, is nothing short of divine. To skeptics, it's an elaborate medieval forgery. But the truth, like the image itself, refuses to come into clear focus. Scientific scrutiny of the Shroud began in earnest in the 1980s, when radiocarbon dating tests conducted by 3 independent labs placed its origin between 1260 and 1390 CE. For many, this seemed conclusive. The Shroud was a medieval creation, likely crafted during a time when religious relics were big business, but the story doesn't end there. The image itself defies easy explanation. Unlike any known painting or pigment, the markings aren't applied to the surface. They're the result of a delicate oxidation of the linen fibers, creating a perfect negative that encodes 3-dimensional data. Modern analysis suggests the image could only have been produced by a sudden, intense burst of light, as if the cloth had been exposed to a flash of radiation. The wounds visible on the Shroud's figure match biblical accounts of Christ's crucifixion with uncanny precision. A crown of thorns, lash marks from Roman flagrums, a spear wound in the side. Pollen samples extracted from the fabric include species native to Jerusalem, lending credence to its Middle Eastern origins. Even the bloodstains, analyzed by forensic experts, exhibit properties consistent with real trauma, clotting in ways that would be nearly impossible to replicate artificially. Yet the carbon dating remains a stubborn contradiction. Some researchers argue that tested samples came from a medieval repair, not the original Shroud. Others suggest contamination from fire damage in the 1500s could have skewed results. The Vatican has remained officially neutral, permitting study while emphasizing the Shroud's spiritual significance over its forensic mysteries. What makes the Shroud of Turin so compelling isn't just the question of its authenticity. It's the way it straddles faith and science, forcing both believers and skeptics to confront the limits of their certainty. For some, it's a tangible connection to the divine. For others, a masterclass in medieval artistry. But perhaps its real power lies in its refusal to be easily categorized, a relic that challenges us to question not just history, but the nature of belief itself. Whether miracle or masterpiece, the Shroud endures as a mirror, reflecting back whatever we most need to see. Carved into the walls of a dark temple chamber in Dendera, Egypt, a series of reliefs have sparked debates that bridge the gap between archaeology and science fiction. These intricate carvings, dating back to the Ptolemaic period around 50 BCE, depict what appear to be giant light bulbs, elongated vessels with serpentine filaments inside, connected by cables to boxy bases that resemble modern electrical transformers. To the untrained eye, they look like blueprints for an ancient lighting system. But could these really be proof that the Egyptians harnessed electricity, or is there a more symbolic explanation hidden in the hieroglyphs? Mainstream Egyptologists offer a compelling alternative. The so-called Dendera light is almost certainly a representation of a jed pillar, a symbol of stability, and a lotus flower, elements commonly linked to creation myths. The filament is likely the snake god Harsomptus emerging from the lotus, a motif tied to rebirth and cosmic energy. The cables might instead be stylized depictions of ropes or ritual staffs, common in religious iconography. Ancient Egyptian art was deeply symbolic, often merging multiple layers of meaning into a single image. What we interpret as a light bulb could simply be a visual metaphor for divine illumination, not literal technology. But fringe researchers aren't convinced. They point to the precision of the carvings, the way the bulbs taper at the base like glass enclosures, the detailed filaments that mirror tungsten wires, even the insulators at the base of the cables. Could this be evidence of lost knowledge? Experiments with replicas of the Baghdad Battery suggest ancient civilizations might have stumbled upon basic electrical principles. If so, perhaps the Dendera reliefs documented a real, if rudimentary, form of lighting, ceremonial or otherwise, later mythologized into religious symbolism. The mystery deepens when you consider the temple's design. The chamber housing these carvings has no soot stains from torches, a detail often cited by alternative theorists. How did the artist see to carve such precise details in pitch darkness? Skeptics counter that mirrors could have redirected sunlight, or that temporary oil lamps might have left no trace. Yet the question lingers, why would a culture with no concept of electricity depict something so eerily similar to it? What makes the Dendera relief so fascinating isn't just the clash of interpretations, it's the underlying tension between two ways of seeing the past. Either we're witnessing the graceful dance of metaphor, where serpents and lotuses encode spiritual truths, or we're glimpsing a fragment of practical knowledge later obscured by time. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, not proof of ancient light bulbs, but a testament to how creatively human minds can mirror the natural world, even anticipating inventions millennia before their time. Whether sacred art or lost science, these carvings refuse to be easily categorized, challenging us to keep questioning the line between myth and reality. In the quiet farmlands of Minnesota, a farmer named Olaf Oman made a discovery in 1898 that would ignite a firestorm of debate. While clearing trees near Kensington, his axe struck something hard, a 200-pound slab of grey-wacky stone buried in the roots of an aspen tree. When he wiped away the dirt, strange markings appeared, a message carved in runes, the ancient script of Norse explorers. The inscription told a harrowing tale. 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland had camped here only to meet tragedy. 10 men red with blood and dead, it read. Dated to the year 1362, the Kensington runestone suggested Vikings had ventured deep into North America, nearly 130 years before Columbus. Linguists and historians immediately clashed over its authenticity. The runes themselves were a puzzle. Some matched medieval Scandinavian script, while others seemed anachronistic or outright fabricated. Critics pointed to grammatical errors and modern word forms, arguing the stone was a clever hoax by Oman, a Swedish immigrant who might have crafted it to honor his heritage. But defenders countered with tree ring dating from the aspen roots, which suggested the stone had been buried since at least the mid-19th century, before Oman's time. The most compelling evidence came from an unlikely source, geology. Minerals embedded in the stone's carved grooves showed weathering patterns consistent with centuries of exposure, not fresh tool marks. And then there's the sheer improbability of a 19th century farmer knowing obscure Norse dialects well enough to fake them convincingly, yet the debate rages on. Could this be a genuine artifact from a forgotten Viking expedition, one that pushed far inland from their known settlements in Newfoundland? Or is it an elaborate forgery, its true story lost to time? What makes the Kensington runestone so fascinating isn't just the question of its origin, it's the cultural rift it exposes. For Scandinavian Americans, it's a symbol of pride, proof of their ancestors' pioneering spirit. For academics, it's a cautionary tale about the allure of romanticized history. And for the rest of us, it's a reminder that history isn't set in stone, sometimes literally. Whether genuine or forged, the runestone challenges us to confront how easily the past can be rewritten, and how fiercely we'll fight to claim it. Rising from a barren hilltop in rural Elbert County, Georgia, 6 towering slabs of granite stood as silent sentinels for over 40 years until explosives reduced them to rubble in 2022. Known as the Georgia Guidestones, these modern monoliths were erected in 1980 under a veil of secrecy, inscribed with 10 cryptic commandments for humanity in 8 different languages. Unlike other ancient artifacts shrouded in the haze of time, these stones were unapologetically contemporary, yet their origins and purpose remain just as enigmatic. The stone's anonymous sponsor, who went only by the pseudonym R.C. Christian, claimed to represent a small group of Americans who envisioned the monument as a compass for rebuilding civilization after an unspecified catastrophe. The guidelines etched into the granite ranged from pragmatic, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, to eerily prescient, like the instruction to guide reproduction wisely, which some interpret as a nod to eugenics. The choice of languages English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian hinted at a global audience, while an additional message buried beneath the stones served as a makeshift time capsule, its contents still unknown. Speculation about the creator's identity reads like a thriller novel. Some point to connections with Rosicrucianism, citing the sponsor's pseudonym as a nod to the legendary Christian Rosencreuz. Others whisper of ties to early survivalist movements or elite technocrats preparing for societal collapse. The stone's alignment with celestial events, marking solstices and equinoxes with perfect precision, only fueled theories about occult symbolism. Yet the most chilling detail, the guidestone's emphasis on population control, which critics argue mirrors dystopian agendas whispered about in conspiracy circles long before the phrase New World Order entered the mainstream lexicon. Then came the explosion. In the pre-dawn hours of July 6, 2022, the monument was obliterated in a controlled detonation, later claimed by anonymous vandals as a strike against globalist influence. But the destruction didn't end the debate, it amplified it. Was the bombing an act of ideological defiance or a staged disappearance to further obscure the stone's true purpose? The remaining fragments were hauled away, leaving only the foundation and a question. Were the guidestones a blueprint for salvation or a warning of forces already in motion? What lingers isn't just the mystery of who built them, it's the uneasy recognition of how closely their commandments mirror modern anxieties about climate change, overpopulation, and societal fragmentation. Unlike ancient relics whose creators are lost to time, the Guidestone's architects could still be alive, watching as their cryptic vision edges closer to reality. Whether a manifesto, a prophecy, or an elaborate psychological experiment, these stones force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Some messages aren't meant for the past. They're warnings, or perhaps instructions for a future that's hurtling toward us faster than we dare admit. Buried in a seam of coal dating back 20 million years, a small metallic cube seemed to defy the very laws of geology. Discovered in 1885 by workers at a foundry in Wolfsegg, Austria, this peculiar object, roughly the size of a child's fist, bore sharp edges and a groove running around its circumference as if machined by human hand. But here's the catch: coal forms over millions of years, long before any known civilization could have crafted metal tools. So what was the Wolfsegg iron, and how did it end up encased in prehistoric plant matter? Initial tests only deepened the mystery. The cube, weighing just over 1 pound, was composed of nearly pure iron with traces of nickel, a composition resembling meteoric metal rather than smelted ore. But its geometric perfection raised eyebrows. Natural meteorites rarely fracture into such precise shapes, and that encircling groove suggested intentional design. Some researchers proposed it might be a fragment of an ancient mining tool, somehow embedded in the coal through unexplained geological processes. Others whispered of lost advanced civilizations or even extraterrestrial visitors, leaving behind artifacts far older than recorded history. Skeptics offered simpler explanations. Could the cube be a pyrite nodule, a mineral formation that sometimes crystallizes into geometric shapes later altered by natural forces? Pyrite, however, is brittle and sulfur-based, nothing like the Wolfsegg iron's dense metallic structure. Another theory suggested it was a piece of debris from 19th century mining equipment, accidentally pressed into the coal and misinterpreted. But contemporary records show the coal block containing the object was intact when excavated, with no signs of modern interference. Then, in a twist straight out of a detective novel, the artifact vanished. After bouncing between private collections and museums, it disappeared without a trace in the early 20th century, leaving behind only sketches and written accounts. Some believe it was stolen, others suspect it was quietly dismissed as a hoax and destroyed. Without the original to study, science hit a dead end. What lingers isn't just the question of its origin, it's the unsettling implication. If the wolf's egg iron was truly shaped by intelligence, whose 20 million years ago humans didn't exist, the first stone tools wouldn't appear for another 19.5 million years. This unassuming cube forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge, to wonder if industrial-scale metallurgy might have flickered into existence and vanished long before our ancestors crawled from the savannah. Whether a freak of nature or a relic of the unimaginable, the wolf's egg iron remains a silent challenge, daring us to reconsider just how deep and how strange the roots of technology might go. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, hundreds of stone spheres lie half buried in the earth, some as small as a grapefruit, others towering taller than a man and weighing up to 16 tons. Carved from volcanic rock with uncanny symmetry, these orbs are so precise that modern engineers struggle to explain how they were shaped using only the primitive tools available to pre-Columbian cultures. Discovered in the 1930s by workers clearing land for banana plantations, the spheres were initially dismissed as oddities until researchers realized their staggering craftsmanship. The mystery begins with their creation. Dating back to at least 600 CE, the spheres were likely crafted by the extinct Diquis culture, yet no chisels or grinding tools capable of such work have ever been found at the sites. Some exhibit surface variations of less than 2 millimeters, a level of precision rivaling modern machining. How did a society without metal tools or the wheel achieve such geometric perfection? Theories range from the practical to the fantastical. Some archaeologists propose they used a combination of heat, water, and meticulous pecking with stone hammers, a process that would have required generations of painstaking labor. Others speculate about lost techniques involving abrasives from local riverbeds, though no direct evidence supports this. Then there's the question of purpose. Were they celestial markers aligned with constellations or solstices like Stonehenge? A few spheres have been found near burial sites, suggesting ritual significance, while others are arranged in geometric patterns whose meaning has been lost. Local legends speak of the spheres as relics from the people of the star, who supposedly received divine knowledge to carve them. More controversial theories link them to Atlantis or even extraterrestrial visitors, citing their near-impossible symmetry as proof of advanced intervention. But the most haunting detail is their dislocation. Many spheres were dynamited by treasure hunters in the early 20th century, and others were hauled away to adorn government buildings and private gardens, erasing their original context. Without knowing their placements or groupings, we've lost crucial clues to their function. What remains is a silent testament to a culture that mastered stone in ways we still can't replicate, and a reminder that some skills of the past might have been far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. Whether monuments, maps, or messages, these spheres refuse to be pigeonholed, standing as perfect enigmas in an imperfect world. Beneath the shifting sands of modern Iraq, archaeologists excavating the ancient city of Ubaid made a discovery that still sends chills down spines, a cache of clay figurines unlike anything else from early Mesopotamian history. Dating back 7,000 years, these statues depict humanoid figures with elongated heads, almond-shaped reptilian eyes, and unmistakably lizard-like features. Some cradle infants with the same eerie characteristics, while others strike poses that suggest ritualistic significance. To mainstream scholars, they're symbolic representations of deities, possibly linked to fertility cults or shamanistic beliefs. But to those willing to entertain alternative theories, the Ubaid lizardmen raise far more unsettling questions. The conventional archaeological view ties these statues to the Ubaid culture, a prehistoric society that predated even the Sumerians. Experts point to similar stylized figurines found across the region, arguing the reptilian traits are artistic exaggerations, perhaps symbolizing wisdom, rebirth, or connection to water, given the region's reliance on rivers. The slit eyes and elongated skulls might represent masks or headdresses worn during ceremonies, a practice documented in later Mesopotamian art. But here's where the narrative phrase. Unlike other ritual objects from the period, these figures lack clear parallels in myth or iconography. No known Ubaid texts, if they even existed, explain their purpose, leaving a void quickly filled by speculation. Enter the fringe theories. Ancient astronaut proponents argue the statues are literal depictions of a reptilian species, either native to Earth or visitors from elsewhere. They note the figures' pronounced shoulders and postures, which resemble modern descriptions of reptilian humanoids in UFO lore. More radical still are suggestions that the Ubaid culture might have interbred with or worshipped these beings, citing global legends of serpent gods from the Nagas of Hinduism to Quetzalcoatl of Mesoamerica. Even mainstream historians admit the global prevalence of reptilian symbolism is curious, though they attribute it to universal human fascination with snakes as symbols of danger and transformation. Yet the most compelling counterpoint comes from biology. The infants cradled by some statues show the same reptilian traits, implying these features were hereditary, not ceremonial. Could the Ubaid people have suffered from a genetic condition causing elongated skulls and unusual eye shapes? Conditions like hydrocephalus or intentional cranial deformation practiced by later cultures might explain some traits, but not the consistent emphasis on scales and slit pupils carved into the clay. What makes these figurines so haunting isn't just their appearance, it's their silence. Without written records, we're left projecting our own fears and fantasies onto them. Are they proof of a lost race, a distorted memory of advanced beings, or simply a testament to human creativity's boundless strangeness? The Ubaid lizardmen refuse to fit neatly into any box, slithering through the gaps in our understanding. They challenge us to wonder how much of history's tapestry is woven with threads we've yet to recognize or dare to acknowledge. Among the dusty shelves of the Vatican's secret archives, a single scrap of papyrus has fueled one of history's most persistent mysteries. Known as the Tully Papyrus, this fragment, purportedly copied from an original Egyptian document dating to the reign of Thutmose III around 1480 BCE, contains a passage that reads like something straight out of a science fiction novel. It describes circles of fire appearing in the sky brighter than the sun, moving unpredictably before vanishing into the heavens. To UFO enthusiasts, this isn't just ancient poetry, it's the oldest documented sighting of extraterrestrial spacecraft. But like so many artifacts that challenge mainstream history, the truth behind the Tully Papyrus is anything but clear. The story begins in 1933, when an Italian antiquities dealer named Alberto Tully claimed to have discovered the papyrus in a Cairo shop. Too expensive to purchase outright, he allegedly copied its text, meaning no original has ever been examined by modern scholars. The translation, first published in the 1950s, describes a surreal event. In the year 22, third month of winter, 6th hour of the day, scribes of the House of Life found a circle of fire coming in the sky. It had no head, the breath of its mouth emitted a foul odor. The account goes on to say these objects multiplied, terrifying witnesses before ascending into the sky. Mainstream Egyptologists dismiss the text as either a mistranslation or outright fabrication. They argue terms like circle of fire could refer to atmospheric phenomena like ball lightning or meteors, common in Egyptian records. The foul odor might describe volcanic gases or even ceremonial smoke, misconstrued over centuries of copying. Without the original papyrus to authenticate, the translation remains suspect, especially since no other known Egyptian texts mention such an event. Yet UFO researchers cling to the Tully Papyrus for a compelling reason: context. Thutmose III's reign was a golden age of Egyptian record-keeping, with meticulous accounts of celestial events. If even a fraction of the text is genuine, it suggests something truly extraordinary occurred, something outside the Egyptians' understanding of natural phenomena. The fact that these circles moved against the wind and exhibited intelligent behavior sets them apart from ordinary astronomical events. The most plausible explanation lies somewhere in between. The Tully Papyrus may not prove ancient alien visitations, but it almost certainly reflects something unusual witnessed and recorded by Egyptian scribes. Whether a rare atmospheric disturbance, an early case of mass hysteria, or simply a later forgery, this fragment forces us to confront how easily the line between myth and evidence can blur. It's a reminder that our ancestors gazed at the same skies we do, and sometimes they saw things we're still struggling to explain. What makes the Tully Papyrus so enduring isn't its credibility as a UFO log, but the questions it raises about human perception. Across cultures and millennia, people have reported luminous objects in the sky, often interpreting them through the lens of their time, gods, omens, or now extraterrestrials. The papyrus, real or not, taps into a universal fascination with the unknown. It challenges us to wonder, if Thutmose's scribes did see something inexplicable, how many other ancient accounts have we dismissed as myth when they might be the earliest chapters in humanity's unfinished story of the cosmos? In the remote mining regions of South Africa, workers sometimes stumble upon objects that defy explanation, but none are as perplexing as the so-called grooved spheres. These small, metallic orbs, no larger than a few centimeters across, have been discovered embedded in Precambrian rock layers dating back an astonishing 3 billion years. And here's what makes them so baffling. Each sphere is encircled by 3 perfectly parallel grooves, running along its equator as if machined with industrial precision. To put that age into perspective, these spheres were encased in rock before multicellular life existed on Earth, before the first fish, before the first plants, even before the first bacteria capable of photosynthesis. The idea that something so meticulously crafted could exist in a time when the planet was nothing more than a swirling cauldron of molten rock and primitive microbes strains belief. Geologists offer a natural explanation. These could be pyrite nodules, spherical formations of iron pyrite that sometimes crystallize in sedimentary rock. Under specific conditions, pyrite can form concentric layers that weather unevenly, creating grooves that appear artificial. But skeptics of this theory point to the sphere's uncanny symmetry. The grooves aren't random, they're evenly spaced, often meeting at precise angles, and some specimens even show faint striations inside the grooves, lines so fine they resemble tool marks. The mystery deepens when you consider the material. Some of these spheres are made of metals like nickel-steel alloys, a combination not found naturally in that region. Others exhibit unusual magnetic properties, with their grooves aligning along magnetic field lines in ways that suggest intentional design. Could these be remnants of a long-lost technological civilization, one that flourished and vanished in Earth's unimaginably distant past? Fringe researchers take the speculation even further. Some propose the spheres are fragments of ancient nanotechnology, perhaps components of a forgotten energy system or tools left behind by an advanced precursor race. Others float the possibility they're not of earthly origin at all, artifacts deliberately planted or accidentally lost by extraterrestrial visitors in prehistory. But here's the wrench in the works. No two spheres are identical. Some show signs of extreme weathering while others remain shockingly pristine. If they were manufactured, why such variation? And if they're natural, why do some exhibit features that mirror human-made objects so closely? What makes the grooved spheres so fascinating isn't just their age or their strange craftsmanship, it's the way they force us to confront the limits of our understanding. Geology can explain much, but not everything. And sometimes the most unsettling question isn't what these objects are, but what their existence implies about the history we think we know. Whether freak formations of nature or echoes of a forgotten epoch, these tiny orbs hold a message far larger than their size, that Earth's past might be infinitely stranger than we've dared to imagine. In the icy depths of the Baltic Sea, a sonar image taken by Swedish treasure hunters in 2011 sparked an international frenzy. What appeared on their screens wasn't a sunken ship or a natural rock formation. It was a near-perfect circular structure, 60 meters in diameter, with strange, angular features jutting from its surface. Dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, this massive object rested on the seabed like a crashed UFO, its geometric precision defying the randomness of nature. Almost immediately, wild theories erupted. Was this proof of extraterrestrial visitors, a secret Nazi anti-submarine device from World War II, or just a trick of geology, an oddly shaped glacial deposit sculpted by ancient ice flows? Diving expeditions only deepened the mystery. Teams reported bizarre readings. Electronic equipment malfunctioned when approaching the object, as if something was interfering with their instruments. Samples retrieved from the site revealed traces of metals not typically found in the region, including manganese and titanium. Most unsettling of all were the strange, staircase-like formations leading to what appeared to be an entrance or depression in the structure's center. Yet despite the tantalizing clues, no definitive answers emerged. Mainstream geologists argued the anomaly was likely a glacial erratic, a boulder dragged and deposited by retreating ice sheets thousands of years ago, its peculiar shape carved by underwater currents. But even they struggled to explain the object's near-perfect symmetry or the unnatural-looking pillars surrounding it. Then came the Nazi angle. Conspiracy theorists pointed to Germany's advanced wartime technology, suggesting the anomaly could be a lost Die Glocke prototype, a rumored Nazi experiment in anti-gravity or energy manipulation. Others proposed it might be a sunken U-boat base or a failed underwater weapon. Yet historical records showed no Nazi activity in that specific area, and no known technology from the era matched the anomaly's colossal size or design. The extraterrestrial hypothesis gained traction when divers described the object's surface as covered in soot-like residue, as if it had endured extreme heat, like something entering the atmosphere at high speed. Could this be the remains of an ancient spacecraft resting silently on the ocean floor for millennia? Without physical retrieval and thorough scientific analysis, the Baltic Sea anomaly remains an enigma wrapped in sonar static and speculation. What makes this underwater puzzle so compelling isn't just its strange appearance, it's the way it forces us to confront the limits of exploration. Even in our high-tech era, the ocean floor remains one of Earth's last great frontiers, hiding secrets we've barely begun to uncover. Whether glacial quirk, wartime relic, or something far more extraordinary, the Baltic Sea anomaly serves as a humbling reminder. Sometimes the deeper we dive, the murkier the truth becomes. And perhaps that's exactly how the past prefers it. Deep in the highlands of Bolivia, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, a farmer once plowed his field and struck something that shouldn't have been there, a large stone bowl etched with markings no one could read. This was the Fuente Magna Bowl, and its discovery in the 1950s sparked a firestorm among archaeologists. At first glance, it seemed like just another pre-Columbian relic, until someone noticed the script carved into its interior. The symbols weren't Incan or Tiwanaku. They were cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing of ancient Mesopotamia, a civilization that flourished thousands of miles away and centuries before any known transoceanic contact. Mainstream scholars were quick to dismiss the bowl as a hoax or misidentification. After all, the idea that Sumerians could have reached South America contradicts everything we know about ancient seafaring capabilities. The bowl's artistic style also raised eyebrows. It lacked the refinement of typical Mesopotamian work, with cruder lines and less precision in the cuneiform. But here's where the story twists. Linguist Clyde Winters later claimed the script was a Proto-Sumerian dialect, predating even the earliest known examples of cuneiform. If true, this wouldn't just connect Bolivia to Mesopotamia, it would suggest a cultural exchange far older than anyone imagined. diffusionists who argue for ancient transoceanic contact seized on the bowl as potential evidence. They point to similarities between Sumerian and Andean flood myths, or the shared use of stepped pyramids in both regions. Could a lost group of Mesopotamian explorers have crossed the Atlantic, bringing their language and traditions with them? The bowl's location near Lake Titicaca, a site steeped in legends of pre-Incan gods, only fuels these theories, yet skeptics counter with a simpler explanation. The bowl might be a colonial-era forgery carved by a European familiar with cuneiform to impress collectors. Or perhaps the script isn't cuneiform at all, but a coincidental resemblance, like seeing faces in cloud. Without additional artifacts to corroborate its origin, the Fuente Magna bowl remains an outlier, dismissed by most academics but cherished by those who believe history's greatest connections are still waiting to be uncovered. What makes this artifact so compelling isn't just the script, it's the implications. If genuine, it forces us to question the isolation we've assigned to ancient cultures. Were the Sumerians, famed for their ingenuity, even more adventurous than we thought? Or does the bowl represent something stranger, a fleeting moment of contact lost to time and tide? Whether hoax or history, it challenges us to keep searching for the threads that might, one day, weave our fragmented past into a story far more interconnected than we ever dared to dream. Hidden deep in a private collection in Bogotá, Colombia, lies a circular stone artifact unlike anything else from the ancient world, the genetic disc. Roughly the size of a dinner plate, this black stone slab is carved with intricate, biologically accurate depictions of a human fetus at various stages of development, sperm fertilizing an egg, and even cellular division. Scenes that wouldn't be scientifically understood until the invention of microscopes in the 16th century. Yet radiocarbon dating suggests the disk is over 6,000 years old, predating recorded history's first medical texts by millennia. So how could a prehistoric culture have carved something that required knowledge of microscopic biological processes? Proponents of the disk's authenticity point to the precision of its engravings. The fetal positions aren't symbolic or stylized, they're anatomically correct, showing umbilical connections and developmental milestones that align with modern embryology. Even more baffling are the microscopic tools that would have been required to carve such fine details into the dense lithic material. The disc is made of lyddite, a stone so hard that shaping it without metal tools would have been nearly impossible, let alone achieving the intricate precision of these carvings. Skeptics, however, dismiss the genetic disc as an elaborate hoax. They argue the carbon dating comes from organic residue on the disc's surface, not the stone itself, leaving room for contamination. The artwork style also raises red flags. It lacks the symbolic motifs typical of pre-Columbian art, instead resembling modern scientific diagrams. Could a 20th century forger have crafted this to cash in on the ancient astronaut craze? Yet no one has stepped forward to claim responsibility, and the disc's owner insists it was found in a cave alongside other undisputed artifacts. Alternative theories swirl around the disc's origins. Some researchers propose it might be a relic from the mythical Mu civilization, said to have possessed advanced knowledge before vanishing beneath the Pacific. Others suggest it's evidence of extraterrestrial contact, arguing that the carvings resemble textbook illustrations too closely to be coincidental. But perhaps the most unsettling idea is that an ancient culture developed and then lost sophisticated biological knowledge through techniques we can't yet comprehend. What makes the genetic disc so haunting isn't just its existence, it's the implications. If real, it rewrites the history of science, suggesting that our understanding of human biology wasn't a linear progression but a cycle of discovery and forgetting. Whether fraud or fossilized genius, this stone circle forces us to confront how fragile knowledge can be and how much of the past might still be hidden in plain sight. From the celestial calculator hidden in an ancient shipwreck to the metallic sphere lodged in rock older than life itself, These 25 artifacts aren't just oddities, they're seismic cracks in the foundation of history as we know it. Each one stands as a defiant question mark, challenging the neat timelines we've constructed and forcing us to wonder how many chapters of human achievement have been lost to time. The Antikythera Mechanism whispers of mathematical brilliance flourishing centuries too soon, while the grooved spheres suggest industrial precision in an era when Earth itself was still a barren wasteland. The Fuente Magna Bowl dares to sketch invisible trade routes across oceans we thought impassable, and the Ubaid lizardmen stare back at us with slit-pupilled eyes as if guarding secrets we've yet to decode. What binds these relics together isn't just their mystery, it's the way they expose the fragility of our assumptions. For every artifact dismissed as a hoax, there's another that resists easy explanation, lingering at the edges of our understanding like half-remembered dreams. The Piri Reis Map shouldn't depict Antarctica's ice-free coastlines. The Saqqara Bird shouldn't soar like a glider when tested in wind tunnels. The genetic disk shouldn't illustrate cellular biology 6,000 years before microscopes. Yet here they are, scattered across continents and epochs, each a splinter in the smooth narrative of progress we've been taught. This isn't about rewriting history with wild theories, it's about acknowledging how much we still don't know. The past isn't a static exhibit behind glass, it's a living puzzle with missing pieces we're only beginning to recognize. Maybe some of these artifacts are misinterpretations, coincidences, or even elaborate frauds. But maybe, just maybe, others are genuine glimpses of forgotten ingenuity, proof that brilliance isn't linear but cyclical, flaring up in unexpected places before fading into obscurity. So where do we go from here? The real treasure isn't in declaring answers, it's in nurturing the curiosity to keep asking questions. Dive deeper into these enigmas, debate their origins, and let them remind you that history is far stranger, wilder, and more wondrous than any textbook could contain. Now it's your turn. Which artifact left you thunderstruck? Was it the eerie precision of the Nazca lines, the uncanny electricity of the Baghdad Battery, or something else entirely? Light up the comments with your thoughts, and if you're hungry for more mysteries that bend the rules of time, hit subscribe. The past isn't done surprising us yet.